So many women I work with who are in destructive or abusive marriages are stuck. They don't know whether to leave or stay. And if I stay, how do I stay well? It makes sense. The ramifications of either choice is huge. So I'd like to give you some guidelines to help you think through this difficult decision. But before we even talk about that, let me say something very important. Regardless of how you are treated at home, I want you to know something. You have great worth and value. A diamond that is thrown in the garbage can is still a diamond. It has great value, and so do you. Please don't forget that. You are worth being loved, even if your husband doesn't love you, even if he isn't willing or capable of valuing you. God values you. He declares you loved and lovable, and so believe that. So if you're in a destructive marriage, does God always want you to stay? Many women make this choice because they think it's best for their children at the time, or because they're afraid of what their husband will do if they leave, or because of the financial consequences, or because they believe God would be angry if they get divorced. With all of these thoughts floating around in your mind, it's easy to lose sight of your highest values and priorities. Now, this may come as a shock, but your highest priority should not be your marriage. More importantly than your marriage is your relationship with God and the stewardship of you, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. If you're going to stay well in a tough marriage, or in anything, you need to be strong in all of these areas. And that means building your core strength. It means you don't repay evil for evil. It means you have good boundaries. You can stand strong against evil without becoming evil yourself. But when you've been in an emotionally abusive relationship and verbally abused for a while, it feels pretty natural to start giving it right back. And that isn't God's way. It dishonors you. It dishonors the person He made you to be. And at the same time, being strong doesn't mean accepting abuse with forbearance and a smile on your face. The Apostle Paul says that we are to overcome evil with good, and the word overcome is not a passive word. It's not an accommodating word. It's a fighting word. It is good to stand up against evil, to call sin sin, to have healthy boundaries and implement appropriate consequences. And when a woman refuses to submit to her husband's sinful or abusive behavior, refuses to pretend or lie, when she stands up for her children or calls 911 when necessary, she is actually doing her husband good, even though it doesn't feel good to him at the time. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Blessed are the words of a friend." When your husband doesn't experience consequences for his serious and egregious sin against you, it reinforces the idea that he can do whatever he wants with no negative impact to him, even if it negatively impacts you or the kids. It enables him to stay blind to his sin, which isn't good for him or for your family. Before you decide to stay or leave, you need to get very clear about your marriage. You need to face reality instead of living in wishful thinking or worst-case scenario diseases. So what's your reality? Does your husband habitually manipulate you, give you the silent treatment, ignore you, disregard your needs and feelings? Is he addicted to pornography and refuses to get help? Is he engaging in other physical relationships outside the marriage? Does he threaten to hurt you or leave you, hide money, blame you for his sinful behaviors? If this is your reality, is it really possible to stay in that environment well? His actions have already said he's left emotionally, and he may eventually decide to leave you altogether. So don't allow yourself just to stay a passive victim. Now, that doesn't mean you should pack your bags, but it does mean you should start mentally as well as physically preparing in case he does fully abandon you, or in case you can no longer stay well. Decide what you'll need to do to support yourself financially and your children if it comes to that. Prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And some practical steps in doing this would be start making copies of all your tax records, bank balances, investments, and other financial accounts. If you need to, make an appointment with an attorney, not to file for divorce, but for a consultation so that your husband can't bully you with legal threats. Ask your attorney what your next step should be in the event that your husband leaves you, or you need to quickly leave him. Start keeping a record of your assets. And if you think he's hiding money, you may have to hire a forensic accountant. If you've been a stay-at-home mom, I'd encourage you to think about what kind of work you might like to do. Consider getting the credentials you need. This might mean taking some online courses or updating your license from a previous career. You need to know if your marriage ends that you can take good care of yourself and your children. Now, if all of this sounds overwhelming and scary, make sure you're spending regular time with God, asking Him for His wisdom and discernment. His promises are trustworthy, and that He will never leave you or forsake you, even if your husband does. Until next time, God bless.